Welcome to this special edition of the AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. Today we're going to discuss 10DLC. My guest today is Jason Girdner, automotive digital communications expert and CEO of TECOBI. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's good to see you, man.
You as well.
Well, let's just start with the elephant in the room. I thought every text message that was sent got delivered. Is that really the case?
No. There's filters that happen between you sending the text message and the customer's handset at many different stages of the text message going through the communication channel that could cause the text message to not actually make it to the customer.
Wow. And we're here to talk about 10DLC. Can you just start with just give me the basics? What is it and why is it?
So 10DLC stands for 10-digit long code, which is any local phone number. So like 720-555-1212. That is a 10-digit long code. You have short codes and then you have toll-free numbers, but there's rules now that regulate the type of traffic that can be sent over 10DLC numbers from businesses to consumers. So 10DLC is just a way of referencing those rules and the regulations that cell phone carriers are putting in place to stop unwanted spam that people are sending to their customers.
So the unwanted spam, those are some of the random texts that people used to get, right?
Correct. So you'll sometimes get them where they just say hello, or oftentimes there's someone trying to sell you a business loan, or you didn't request any information. It's just random spam from random phone numbers that are typically local phone numbers that you get on your cell phone.
Okay, and so even legitimate business communications are getting kind of looped into that net. They're getting caught in this.
So prior to 2018, it was kind of the wild west of text message, where there was no filtering or monitoring going on with the type of traffic that was being sent to consumers. The FCC ruled as text messages being an information service as opposed to a communication service, which gave the carriers the right to filter text messages. So over the past 4 years or so, the carriers have put in channels in place to route all text message communication through filters that they have to filter out that spam. That's pretty much what 10DLC is. And part of that is, if you're a business and you want to text message customers from a local phone number, you need to go through those channels.
Well, if all of the text messages that are being sent are not making it there, how is this affecting a dealership's follow-up if they're using text messages to follow up with their customers?
So it's kind of hard to tell because there's not much transparency with most of the text messaging software in the car business. Meaning you can see that you sent the message, but the actual status of if it got delivered to the customer's handset is typically not visible in a lot of the CRMs and texting platforms that exist. We do see engagement and response rates dropping, which would lend itself to the fact that a lot of those text messages might not actually get delivered to the customer's handset.
Wow. So if I'm a car salesman or a sales manager, or really anybody in the front of the dealership, and I have these leads and I want to follow up with these leads, and I send text messages to 50 leads, I don't know which ones got the message and which ones don't. What are you supposed to do?
I would recommend using a provider that's transparent with deliverability so that you know if the message got delivered or not. There's a lot of stuff that we've had to build into our system to increase deliverability. So a lot of the rules and regulations that, because over the past 2 or 3 years now that we've really been working close with the carriers for getting text messages delivered, we would see filtering, and then we'd reach out to the carrier and say, hey, why are you filtering this? And they'd say, well, we need to see this and we need to see that. And some of those rules are making sure that you clearly identify your business and yourself when you send the text message. So the first text message needs to say, this is Jason with Carlson Chevrolet, so that the customer knows where the text message is coming from. Some of the other rules that they've kind of enforced on us is appending that every 30 days. So every 30 days, we will append it to a text message that's going out. So it'll have like a signature at the bottom of the text message. There's also the opt-out. You need to make sure, number one, that there's a clear way for the customer to opt out in the first text message, but also every 30 days we're appending the opt-out to a text message that goes out to the customer, so that the customer is always aware of who's texting them and how they can stop the communication from happening. And those are things that the carriers are requiring us to do so that they can ensure that their customers are well informed on who's texting them and have an easy way to stop the text messages if they don't want to receive them anymore. The other side of that is making sure that you're handling opt-out requests. So most systems really only catch words like stop and cancel, and that stops the customer from getting communication. We've implemented artificial intelligence that looks at the inbound text message and looks for any form of I might not want to be contacted. So if the customer says, please stop contacting me, we will catch that with artificial intelligence and stop communication. Another side of that is customers where you have the wrong phone number. The carriers don't want to see you texting customers if they're saying you have the wrong number. So our artificial intelligence will also catch when customers are trying to say, hey, you've got the wrong number, and it'll stop communication. So all those changes that we've made within our system are very crucial to making sure that you don't get filtered when you're sending text messages out to customers.
Wow, that's great. So let's shift gears just for a sec. Can you tell me what the TCPA is and explain it a little, please?
It's the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. It was designed to stop harassment of consumers through the telephone. Back in 2015, an omnibus was released, and it classified phone calls and text messages as being one and the same because texting started to become a thing. So they said, hey, under the TCPA, phone calls and text messages are one and the same. That is the law behind who you're allowed to text. 10DLC is the carrier's rules on being able to use their network to deliver messages to their customers. So they're two really different topics, but pretty important for people to understand the difference between the two.
You mentioned to me in another conversation how a dealership is able to be tracked by the carriers, and they almost have like a credit score for the quality of their text messaging.
Correct.
Can you kind of explain that to our audience, how that works, and how the carriers know who's sending the text, and how the dealers register, and how that can follow them?
So there's something called the campaign registry now, which is a centralized registry that we have to register the phone number and the dealership's federal tax ID with the campaign registry. So when a new client signs up, we get their IRS form that has their tax ID. We literally need the actual IRS form to send to the campaign registry, and we send that along with what type of traffic we're going to be sending over that phone number via text. So we have screenshots of the type of communication that we're going to be sending to the customers, and then the campaign registry goes through a vetting process, and there's 3 companies out there that can vet you, and they're verifying that you're a legitimate business, that you're not trying to scam people, you're not going to spam people, and once you're approved, the various different companies out there do have something akin to a credit score based on the quality of traffic that you're sending over. So if your traffic's really low quality, you could have a lower score, which will result in more filtering that's happening to your messages. Wow,
and so they're registering with their federal tax ID. So it's a lot like a social security number for a business. So so if they get a bad reputation, that can follow them for some time.
Correct. You cannot switch vendors and solve that problem. If your score goes down and the carriers start to see that you're spamming people or abusing your right to text message their customers, you could switch vendors and you won't be able to get text messages delivered from that vendor either because it's tied back to your tax ID through that campaign registry.
Wow. So a dealer that maybe doesn't have transparency in the tool that they're using may not realize they're damaging their reputation. If once they find themselves in that boat, how do they get out of it?
There's services out there that they can enlist, but it's a pretty lengthy process. You're going to want to make sure you have a company that really understands text regulations and rules. So if we start to see filtering for a client because they've sent things through the system that they shouldn't have, we take instances, we go to the phone carrier and they're like, hey, this is why we started filtering. And then we'll go back to the client and have them make adjustments within our software that could hopefully get them where they can start sending messages again. We're kind of in the early stages of all this. I suspect that over the next year or two, we're going to see a more streamlined process for that. But right now, you're really going to have to rely on who your texting vendor is and their knowledge of how to navigate this landscape.
Wow, so it's really a team effort. I mean, your texting vendor and the dealership, they need to be working together, and hopefully every time there is a filtering instance, everybody's getting educated a little bit better on what is appropriate to send.
Correct, and we did a lot of this early in this year where there was some filtering taking place, and we went back and forth and made a lot of adjustments that now our group of dealers have much higher deliverability because they look at me as well and the traffic from all of my clients, and that has increased its deliverability because we've been so willing to work with the carriers and make the adjustments that they've asked us to make to the system and our processes. So yes, who you're working with has a pretty big role in your deliverability, both short-term and long-term deliverability.
Wow, I mean, it really seems like deliverability is important to everybody in the entire lead food chain. I mean, if you're the lead provider, if you're the tool that is communicating with the customer, if you're the dealership, I mean, it's in everybody's best interest to get these things delivered because everybody's measured on metrics that can be absolutely tanked if the text messages aren't reaching the customers.
Yeah, and I haven't seen much talk about it in the car business, to be honest, not as much as I think it should be talked about. I personally believe that digital communication is the next wave of importance in the industry. I think it's as important as the internet because I remember, back when I first started selling software to car dealers, most of them didn't have a website. Now it's like you wouldn't be in business if you didn't have a website.
Yeah.
I think that digital communication, because customers aren't answering the phone. You call them, no one wants to answer the phone to a car salesman, so they ignore our phone calls. You got to imagine you're dealer A, I'm dealer B. You can text message a customer. I can't text message a customer. Who's going to win?
Yeah.
So it's pretty important to understand these rules and regulations and have transparency into your deliverability. And I think lead providers, OEMs, dealers, vendors, everyone needs to be discussing this because it can make a big difference in a dealership success and staying in business, to be quite honest.
Wow. Well, and I mean, if your controlled tool can't get the text messages through, you're going to even incentivize your salespeople more to possibly use their own phones, which opens you up to all kinds of other liabilities.
Yeah. So the usage of cell phones is probably the biggest legal risk that dealerships face right now, because if customers are telling them to stop contacting me, or you've got the wrong number and they're not updating that in the CRM because they're using their personal devices, those are all TCPA violations that put the dealership at risk of class action lawsuits.
Wow. Well, it sounds like transparency is the answer. I mean,
Yes.
it sounds like you need to know if your text messages are getting there, and you also need to know if they're not getting there so you can make adjustments and stop being out of compliance with what these filters are looking for so that you can, keep your name in good standing.
I talk to probably 50 to 100 dealerships a month, and none of them know what 10DLC is. So there's not much transparency in the car business surrounding this, and I always go back to my old saying, when in doubt, be transparent. And there's not much of that happening. We're trying our best to be as transparent with our clients as we can, so they can be educated and understand, why a text message would or wouldn't go through, because it's going to have a big effect on their business in the future.
Jason, thank you for joining us today to educate the audience on 10DLC. This is a super important topic for dealerships that want to stay in touch with their customers. And thank you for taking the time to join us for this AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. Today my guest has been Jason Girdner from TECOBI. We hope to see you again soon. This episode is Over the Curb and Burning Gas.